Well, to discuss the coronavirus and the environment, we are joined by Tom Burke on the programme, the chairman of E3G, Third Generation Environmentalism, and a visiting professor at both Imperial and University Colleges in London. Mr. Burke, thank you very much for joining us live on the programme. We'll get to a more general overview of the environment in just a minute, but I'd like to focus on one species first, that's bees. Today is the World Bee Day. Can you explain how bees have benefited during this period?
Well, I think they're benefiting more from the absence of people than from any change in our agricultural practices. The big danger for bees has been the use of neonicotinoid pesticides, which have been increasingly banned around the world, with the EU taking the lead on that. So the real benefit from them is from now has been just simply, if people are locked down, they're not out doing all the other things that they do that actually disrupt the life of insects. And one of the things that has become very clear in the last, I suppose, 5 years or so, is that we have a serious problem, not just with bees, but with insect life in general. We're seeing massive declines in insect populations, and they're extraordinarily important because they play a central role in pollination. That is what necessary to maintain our food security.
And of course, if we look at the environment more as a whole, we've seen some pretty wonderful sights during this pandemic. Dolphins returning to Venice for the first time in decades, air quality improving almost across the board. Just how much has the environment and natural life benefited from the current health crisis?
Well, right now, what we're seeing is simply the interference of human beings and biodiversity is being much reduced for the reasons I just explained on bees. We've got a lot less people around, we've got a lot less pollution around. What we're finding all over the world, exactly as you described it, is that wildlife is now moving in much more into the city. So people are having a much better experience of it because the cities are quieter. Birdsong, people are hearing birds sing in the middle of Paris or the middle of London in a way they haven't done for decades, probably. So in that sense, it's making people more aware of nature. But I think the longer run impact is we're getting a very brutal lesson in how ignoring nature can rebound and disrupt our lives very dramatically.
Do you feel that people's attitudes have changed towards the environment during the lockdown, as you were mentioning, with people hearing bird sounds and other sights? Or do you think there will be a return to normality, production, money-making, and that's just going to lead us back to square one?
I think it's very hard to judge that at the moment. I think, if you like, we've had 3 shocks. We've had a shock to our health. And I think if governments carry on the way they are, we'll be through that shock by the end of this year or so. We've had a shock to our economies, and I think that's going to take us quite a lot longer to get over. But I think much more importantly, there's been a psychological shock. All 8 billion of us on this planet have all experienced the impact of this virus on our lives. And there's never been any previous occasion when literally everybody on the planet has had the same experience at the same time. And I think the psychological impact of that will make us, as we move past the health and the economic things, will make us evaluate a lot more how we're responding to these threats that are on the horizon, aren't immediately in front of us. So my sense is it's going to sensitize the public much more to the need to pay attention to what nature and what's happening to nature, biodiversity, the climate, to pollution, in order that we don't find there are more very disruptive surprises out there.
And the planet's sending us a message indeed. Tom Burke, the chairman of E3G, Third Generation Environmentalism, thank you ever so much for your analysis and for joining us live on the programme. Thank you.